Hi everyone. We're going to take a moment and talk a little bit about communication for leadership. There are three different types of communication. The first is intrapersonal communication, second is interpersonal communication, and the third is public communication. The definition that I particularly like to use for communication is as follows. Communication is a conscious or unconscious, intentional or unintentional process in which in any communication model, noise is interference with the decoding of messages sent over a channel by an encoder. There are many different examples of communication noise. We're going to take a look at a few of them. The first is environmental noise. That is noise that physically disrupts communication, such as standing next to loudspeakers at a party, or the noise from a construction site next to a classroom, making it difficult to hear the professor. Then we have physiological impairment noise, where physical maladies that prevent effective communication, such as actual deafness or blindness, preventing messages from being received as they were intended. Semantic noise are different interpretations of the meaning of certain words. For example, the word weed can be interpreted as an undesirable plant in your yard, or as a euphemism for marijuana. Then we have syntactical noise, which are mistakes in grammar which can disrupt communication, such as abrupt changes in verb tense during a sentence. Next one is organizational noise, which is poorly structured communication which can prevent the receiver from accurate interpretation. For example, unclear and badly stated directions can make the receiver even more lost. Then we have cultural noise, which are stereotypical assumptions which can cause misunderstandings, such as unintentionally offending Jews by wishing them a Merry Christmas. And last but not least, we have psychological noise, where certain attitudes can also make communication difficult. Now we're going to take a look at the different models of human communication. The first type of model is considered linear communication. The linear model views communication as a one-way or linear process in which the speaker speaks and the listener listens. The main flaw in the linear model is that it depicts communication as a one-way process where speakers only speak and never listen. It also implies that listeners listen and never speak or send messages. Schramm and Wood came out with a more interactive model that saw the receiver or listener providing feedback to the sender or speaker. The speaker or sender of the message also listens to the feedback given by the receiver or listener. Both the speaker and listener take turns to speak and listen to each other. Feedback is given either verbally or non-verbally or in both ways. This model also indicates that the speaker and listener communicate better if they have common fields of experience or fields which overlap. The main drawback in the interactive model is that it does not indicate that communicators can both send and receive messages simultaneously. This model also fails to show that communication is a dynamic process which changes over time. The transactional model shows that the elements in communication are interdependent. Each person in the communication act is both a speaker and a listener and can be simultaneously sending and receiving messages. There are three implications in the transactional model. Transactional means that communication is an ongoing and continuously changing process. You are changing, the people with whom you are communicating are changing, and your environment is also continually changing as well. In any transactional process, each element exists in relation to all the other elements. There is this interdependence where there can be no source without a receiver and no message without a source. Each person in the communication process reacts depending on factors such as their background, prior experiences, attitudes, cultural beliefs, and self-esteem. Intracultural communication is communication between people of the same cultural background. Interactants share same ground rules. They encode and decode using the same cultural code. can be negative because of expectations created by cultural filters and ethnocentrism. We tend to read more than is intended. There are some barriers to effective intracultural communication, such as assumptions of similarities, language differences, nonverbal misinterpretations, preconceptions and stereotypes, tendency to evaluate, and high anxiety or tension. Unlike intracultural communication, where message senders and receivers share the same ground rules, intercultural communication is associated with a host of additional social and psychological issues. There is uncertainty or ambiguity concerning the ground rules by which the interaction should occur. Given the pervasive influence of culture, it's always difficult to figure out the rules being employed by two people from different cultures. And this uncertainty is inherent in verbal as well as nonverbal communication in both encoding and decoding modes. So how can we package messages into precise words to convey our thoughts as accurately as possible? And how can we interpret the sender's messages exactly as intended? Uncertainty can easily mount to the point of utter miscommunication. Hence, uncertainty reduction is the initial major goal of intercultural communication. Unless uncertainty is reduced, it's impossible for senders and receivers to begin processing the intended message content. Once we engage in intercultural communication, some conflict and misunderstanding is inevitable. Conflict arises when people's behavior does not conform to our expectations. We tend to interpret such behaviors as transgression against our values. Of course, uncertainty can contribute to this conflict.